today we get to hear from Jim and Leslie. And Jim and Leslie I've known for like 5 years now, almost. And to be honest, if it wasn't for Jim and Leslie and our connection with them, Alex and I might not be here today, and we might never have gotten connected here. And I'm going to let them share a little bit more about their story and their connection here to Carpenter's Church. So you guys can come on up. They're going to be sharing this morning, and you are going to be so blessed to hear a little bit about their experience in ministry, with ministry. So I'll let them take it from here.
Thanks, Garrett. With all that hype, I hope you don't expect too much from us. Sorry. It's tough to, we talked to Pastor John about this before he left, and just how we thought we should proceed, and he said, well, maybe just give a little bit of your history and then talk about the ministry we are involved in right now, which is Saskatoon Youth for Christ. And so we had it up to 2 hours, and we cut it back quite a bit. There's a quiz at the end, so keep remembering the dates and everything that we give you. So, what do we got here coming up? Okay. Joey, you were supposed to put a picture up there. Anyways, there it is. That's the house that I was raised in. And my grandfather built it in 1909, and my dad was raised in that house too. And we sold the farm after Dad passed away in 2001, and people still living there. It looks a little more used than it was when we lived there. But that's it. We took that picture 2 years ago when we were out for my niece's wedding. So that being from a farm background and small town in the Moosomin, Saskatchewan area, where some of you may know that. And whoops, who's from Moosomin over there? Rocanville, right? Same place, same. My sister and her husband still live in a acreage outside of Moosomin. My mom lives in town, or pardon me, she's now in a nursing home. Her health is getting worse. And I've got a niece, and her husband lived just not that far away from my sister. So when I was growing up, I was involved quite a bit in alcohol at the age of 14 or so. I got involved a lot there. It wasn't that it was flowing, in our house, because my dad would just drink occasionally, or mom during holiday time. But we'd find guys to bootleg for us, and I had a guy that was a year older than I, so he was able to drive. And then drugs became a part of my life in about 16. Some of the milder stuff. And then also it came to light a few years afterwards that abuse was a part of my life too. My dad had been sexually abused by a relative, and then when he passed away, came to me too that I had the same issues. So when I left home, I didn't want to go back. I went to Brandon, went to university there. Then I worked at a store called Consumers Distributing. There's going to be a few, somebody remembers that one. That was, yeah, we still remember some of the catalog numbers, but sure, some of them were popular ones. And so I worked in Brandon, got laid off for 1 year, then got a job selling cars and bouncing in a bar. That was great for a guy that drank alcohol to be a bouncer in a bar. And finally I got hired back and became a management trainee, became the manager of that store there, and I was asked to go to Moose Jaw to train the lady that was a manager there. So, and that's the lady. So she got even with me. She got married to me. She got even with me. Go ahead.
So when he was hard on me, I got back with him, So I was not raised in a Christian home. I had good parents. Mom was kind of distant, but moms and dads only do what they can do, right? And they're doing the best job they can. So I'll go ahead quite a bit. When I was 18, my dad drank quite a bit, but he was a good dad, He was, we moved a lot because Dad was in the service. And so what happened was Dad came to Mom and I and said, we should probably go to church. Well, Mom and I looked at it, oh yeah, that's going to happen. And so the next day, Sunday, we got up, we went to church. Well, then Dad wanted to go Sunday night. Well, that was really odd, you know. So out of that, my dad became a Christian. He went up to the altar. I might get emotional. But out of that, our whole family came to the Lord. And I had a grandmother that prayed like crazy. I mean, and grandmas, keep praying because those kids will come. And out of that, I'm going up maybe a couple of years. I met a young man in church, and we got married. And that was in Ontario, and that was not Jim. We moved out to Saskatchewan. Things were not good. I'm not going to go into the details, but I divorced him when he was in jail for assault and battery and theft. And I kept on holding on to Jesus. And sometimes you got to think back that this was 40-some years ago, you know, and some things were a little strict in the church in those days. And I brought Jim to church because I told him if he was going to take me out, he had to come to church with me on Sunday morning. And a couple of the elders did not approve. And this is where I was not wise. I left the church that day and said I would never come back. Now, Jim would have come to the Lord a lot sooner if I had been wiser. And so that's when we come to the fact that, a year down the road, I met Jim. I had this job I really needed, and he came into Consumers Distributing, and he was going to help me clean it up. And it was a mess because I didn't know what I was doing. And he came in and put his briefcase down, and he went up and down the aisle, and I thought, oh, I'm going to get fired for sure. Like, you know, this is bad news. And then
Knowing what I know now, I should have fired her.
So he went up and down the aisle, and he came to me, and of course, I'm sputtering, please don't fire me, I really need this job. I'll really work hard. And so he taught me how to be a manager.
I'll skip ahead to, we worked for Consumers for a while, and then I left Consumers and went to McLeod's. So another one. People are nodding their head, they remember that one. And Leslie was still with Consumers. We got married in September, so next month, 1978. So it'll be 41 years next month. We weren't supposed to have any kids. And I got a job at the bank as a trainee in Regina. And then we got moved, my first post was Yorkton. And we weren't supposed to have children, so we were starting the process for adoption. And we got into that process quite a ways, actually. And then Leslie found out she was pregnant, or she thought she was pregnant. So she went to the doctor, and the doctor kept saying, well, you're not pregnant. You're just, I don't know how I worded it to you.
He said, just give it up.
And then all of a sudden, he comes into the room after he does the test, and he said, we're pregnant. Like, I don't know what part he had to do with it, but he was there, I guess. So we got moved from Yorkton back to Regina, on to Moose Jaw. Leslie went through a cancer scare, had surgery, and it was tough because April was about 3 at that time. So I was trying to, I kind of worried a lot about, I hope Leslie makes it through, and she did. God healed her of that. And we didn't realize how the miracles were coming to us, even though we weren't walking with God like we should have. And then we got transferred to Weyburn, and that's where things really started to happen. I'll let you tell your story about Weyburn.
So when we were in Moose Jaw, before we moved to Weyburn, there was God just puts Christian friends in front of your face when you're not where you should be. And I showed her a dress that April could go to Sunday school in, and she said to me, "That's if she ever gets there." And that's the time that I realized I wasn't only doing it wrong for me, but I was affecting my husband and most of all my daughter. So when we got transferred to Weyburn, I went church shopping. And of course, Jim thought that was weird. Yeah, and I found this awesome church. They just loved on us. And out of that, this one night, I wanted to go to this special service. And Jim and I had a horrific fight. So, you know, if God's moving, you're probably going to have a fight. And the preacher was from Texas, and I'm listening to what she's saying. April's with me, and she called me out of the crowd. She said, "You with the white sweater and the beige skirt, God's gonna heal you tonight." Well, it wasn't a physical healing, it was an emotional healing. I had never gotten over the fact that I had been divorced. That wasn't where I wanted to go. I had never gotten over the fact that my ex-husband had been in prison. And then I met Jim, and you know, he was so patient with me because I was a bit of a pain in the butt, you know? Like I tested.
That goes back to that firing story.
I tested him to the absolute limit, but he was so gentle with me. He always told me I could do it, and just reconfirmed things. Now, out of that, she said to me, "I'm going to put my hand on the back and the front of you." And I supernaturally felt warmness through my body. And that was the beginning. And for the first time in several years, I felt free. And that God didn't blame me, and he loved me. And God had to deal with me first before he could bring my husband and my child to him. And April was going to Sunday school, but she was wondering what was going on with Mom and Dad, you know? So I'll let Jim take it from there.
Yeah, there was a couple guys in the church, like I didn't realize the whole church was praying for me, especially two older ladies that prayer warriors, and when they prayed, earth moved, I'll tell you, with them. But I got to know a couple guys. One of them was Ken, and Ken had gone through a similar route to me, through one divorce, had a couple of boys from that first marriage, and then got remarried after he became a Christian, and they had 3 children. And he kind of understood my walk and understood what was going on. So it was great to get to know him. And then I had another fella that was Brad. Brad even has recently moved to Saskatoon here. So Brad was with another bank, and he understood kind of what the pressures and everything were. So those guys became my accountability partners. And finally, in May of 1991, I finally made a decision to follow Christ. So then it was, well, what do I do now? Well, the first thing is pour the booze down the sink. And then, serve. That seems to be the thing that God kept saying to me, serve, serve, serve. So I got involved with it was a Pentecostal church in Weyburn, and it's a boys and girls club. It used to be called Crusaders. And they had kids from grade 3 to 15, I believe. So I volunteered with that one, with that group, and I had a small group of my own. And then we started talking, Ken and I and some other fellows that we got to know, about what we should do. There seemed to be a real need for something in Weyburn for kids. Everybody had their youth group, but there was a lot of kids that were outside of that youth group that just, they needed something too. So we talked, and then one of the fellows knew the fellow from YFC Portage La Prairie, Youth for Christ Portage La Prairie. And he's from Estevan area. He came and spoke at one of our kind of board meetings, I guess you call it. And we thought, well, why recreate the wheel? It's done, it's successful, it's been all over the place, so why don't we go with that? And then Ken and I started out and spent a weekend touring a bunch of drop-in centers in Winnipeg and Selkirk and Steinbach. Yeah, and Portage. And it was great to see the work that they did there and everything of that nature. And so it kind of put a bug in our, I guess, to start something there. Well, of course, God has a sense of humor. We had our first fundraising banquet, and then I found out I got transferred to Outlook. So, okay. So, but I know that the Weyburn YSC is still going. Southeastern Saskatchewan, it's called now. And they got a skateboard park and a drop-in center and everything there. So we were able to tour it a few years ago and kind of see it come to life there. Then we moved to Outlook, and about maybe a year after we'd been in Outlook, 1993 we moved there, I ran into Gil Clausen. Some of you may know him as he worked for Youth for Christ for several years. Just recently resigned and took another post at Oskady Camp Oskady. And it was one of the things I always struggled with is my music. I never grew up from the headbanger age, and so it was always a struggle. But when I went to the Bible bookstore, this Dwayne Dacu, I think is his name, he always had stuff that he would play for me, and yeah, okay, that sounds good, so let's go do that. And I still listen to Skillet today. I know it's bad. You can pray for me. Then well, I forgot, Leslie, April and I were baptized New Year's Eve 1991. So both of us were baptized not at the same time, but I did it. I was after April that time. So then we moved from Outlook I became on the board of Saskatoon Youth for Christ. We moved to Prince Albert. I stayed on the board. Then there was a lot of things happened in Prince Albert. Within a 2-year period, my dad passed away. Leslie's mom and dad passed away. Our daughter April moved to Calgary. She got married, and we were going through a lot of stressful stuff. We were driving back and forth. There was nights we'd leave Prince Albert at 5. We'd drive to Moose Jaw, drop Leslie off, drive to Mooseman, and then do the trip back again on Sunday. So there was a lot of things going on because our dads were in the hospital at that time, and our moms and everything needed a lot more care. So I had to back away from Youth for Christ, and it came to a point in time where I had to do something. My doctor said, you got to take some time off because you're burnt out. You're completely burnt out. You've been going like crazy. So prayed to God and said, what are we going to do? And so I had two choices. I could take 6 months off, or I guess I could take early retirement. So the bank said, okay, well, if you're taking early retirement, we'll offer you a package. So in 2006, I took early retirement the summer of 2006, and probably slept 23 to 24 hours for the next couple of months. And then I got bored, and then I thought, I got to get a job. Nothing seemed to fit in for me. So we moved to Saskatoon between Christmas and New Year's of 2006. Neither one of us had a job, but we thought, well, we'll trust God. Did a couple of things after that, and then Gil knew we had moved to Saskatoon, so he asked us, both of us, to be on the board, because he said, you never agree on anything, so, well, it'll be your vote offset Leslie's vote or vice versa, so it's okay. So we became connected with Youth for Christ, and then finally I decided, God's prompting, maybe I'll go to work for them, and that's a tough decision. If you know anything about Youth for Christ, we have to raise our own support, our salary and our own support. Any programs we run, we got to raise money for that. We had some very, very good donors, some really tremendous people that have partnered with us and given us money and walked with us through all this, and especially prayed for the kids. It came to light about 8-9 years ago that we had to do something. We were in this neighborhood. We were doing stuff outside of the neighborhood, but we weren't doing anything in the neighborhood. So we thought we'll try a drop-in with some summer students Our first drop-in night, we had 2 kids show up. I don't think Jason was one of them, though. Jason Jr. over there. So we had 2 kids. We thought, okay, is this what you wanted us to do, God? But then it started to build every week as we went through the summer. So how Garrett and Alex became involved is they were at Horizon, and they wanted to volunteer with us. So, okay, that's great. So they came and volunteered with us. Then they went back to Winnipeg, and we thought, oh, we've lost them. So we prayed. So it's our fault you're back in Saskatoon. And then when they became the youth pastors here at that time, we decided, okay, we got to do something youth related. They have the training. We don't have the biblical training.
We have the heart.
Heart, yeah, I guess so. I don't know. They have heart too.
Yeah.
But our first youth, they reminded me the other day, the first time we opened up youth here on a Friday night, we had no kids here. Now you wonder, okay, what's going on? So we've been interconnected with Carpenters, and we've really appreciated the partnership. Pastor John we knew from our other church, and we've gotten to know a lot of the great people in this church. A lot of the kids, parents. See some people here that came for today. I don't think they're going to come into the church on a regular basis, right? Okay, she's shaking her head back there. So just a couple of things. Do you want to add anything to that? Or?
So, you never know where
12:02.
God's going to take you.
12:02.
Yeah. So when Jim came to me and said, I think we should have a drop-in center, and we'll feed them pizza pops.
We had a microwave. That's all we had. And a fridge.
We had
We couldn't do anything else.
No. We had a microwave, and we had a slow cooker. And then you know what? God just opened the doors, and it just flooded in. And out of that, kids would come hungry. I mean, kids are kids, right? So I'd say to Jim, we need to do a supper. Okay, so then we need to raise money for the supper. But you know what? When we first started, we had a microwave and a slow cooker, and a fridge would only close if you put Velcro across the thing, which was really special. But God has just blessed us. We have 3 freezers now, a fridge that closes, 2 microwaves, and we've just had people out. A stove. We never had a stove. And the church we were going to at the time, they donated a stove because they said, can we make stuff and bring it to you? Well, yeah, but we don't have a stove. And the next day, we got money for a stove. And it's been 8 years, but God has just multiplied. We were all interconnected at some time or another with youth, with Micah. He used to come over to Youth for Christ and encourage us and say, it's going to get better, it's going to get better. And then Garrett and Alex came on, and then John, and we all knew each other's heart. And that is the changing of it. We're 67 years old, but God gives us dreams.
You are, I'm 66.
You gotta love him, huh? And God has just brought people around us in our dream, and we have just gone for it. And we've got to be part of seeing a wedding with Jennifer and her hubby, and that was cool. And
great time to celebration, that one.
Yeah, and we just love our kids. And so we're at, if you don't know, we're at Youth for Christ on Tuesdays from 5 to 7. It's just a hangout time. Kids play video games, get fed. And then on Friday nights, Garrett and Alex run that. And that's from 6 till 9. So pray for our kids. There's some pictures out there that you can have too if you want. Jim is involved.
That's a sharp-looking group there.
Yeah.
That previous picture.
Jim's involved with the floor hockey team. So never think that I can't do that, because you can. Big or small, you can do that.
One of the other things I'm involved in is Kim Worthington started it, and then Evan has taken it over, but we're going into our 11th season. Intercity floor hockey at WP Bates. And I started driving some of the kids when they were just, well, there was one kid, a short little fat kid, he called himself. Now he's growing up. I've got pictures there, I think. So the pictures that were sliding through are some of the kids that we've worked with and some of the things that we've done. So I've enjoyed that. I sell concession, but I always wondered, well, I wonder what I'm doing here. What's my purpose selling concession? Well, you got kids always coming up and, can I have something? Or can I buy something? And you get a chance to talk to just about all the kids every night, every Wednesday night. And a lot of them, will, like one kid came up one night and he said, we were getting stuff signed. He was 17 at the time. His two younger brothers were coming to hockey. And he wanted to go to our boot camp that we have every year. And so we said, well, who's going to sign for the minors? He said, well, Mom took off. She's somewhere in the States. We don't know where she is. Here's a 17-year-old kid taking care of two of his younger siblings. So, well, okay, we'll try and work. We got them worked out so that we could take them all to camp. So, and our dream, what is our dream, Leslie?
Okay, this is my big dream. There's a corner lot.
There's a pray about this one.
There's a corner lot on Islawell. We could build a gym there. And then we could have offices, we could have a kitchen. That's my dream.
But the car dealership would have to move.
Well, that's okay. And he only wants $1 million, So that would be my big dream, but most of all, our dream is that kids would know Christ. And they wouldn't go through the things that we did and make the bad decisions that we made. And so we thank you for listening to our story.
Just a couple of things we've learned in our walk, and people ask us why we do this all the time, and thinking about it too, and I guess you are never too old to serve, and you're never done doing God's work. And if God's in the equation, then it'll succeed. Sometimes we're trying to take it back and make it our own, and it always is tough then, becomes really tough then. And you can serve in small ways, and never be afraid to offer help. Serve in small ways. You can make cookies, you can make a meal, you can guard the door, things of that, anything of that nature.
You can come and color with a kid on Tuesday nights.
We got some great, and every September, I'm looking forward to September, because it always seems to change. The group, more come into the youth, and it's kind of works that way. So it's really, I'm looking forward to this new year. Of course, everybody thinks January, but we always go September to August, because that's our year too. So, thank you for listening.
Thank you.
Thank you guys so much for sharing. Angie, can I get you to come up? Jim and Leslie, they're awesome. And if you have never sat down with them and had a conversation with them and heard their heart, I encourage you strongly to do that today. Stay here till 1:30 if you have to get a piece of them, because they're worth it. And it's because they know that it's not about them and it's about Jesus, and it's about what he's doing through them. And I'm going to get these guys to play something just for a little bit, and I want to give you a chance to process kind of what they were talking about at the end, talking about serving, and maybe you feel like you're too old to serve, like you've put in your time and you're done, or maybe you just don't know where you could serve or what it looks like to serve. And I want to give you a few moments to think about, like, how God do you want to use me? How do you want me to serve? Maybe it's at the drop-in, maybe it's here at this church, maybe it's neither, maybe it's somewhere else. But ask God how he wants to use you, how he wants you to serve the people around you.